Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Deconversion Stories. And today I have the absolute pleasure of chatting with my friend Autumn over here, also known as Notes from Autumn. You can find her on TikTok, on Twitter, on YouTube, and all the links and stuff are below, also on Instagram and stuff like that there as well. So check out those links. And if you don't know who Autumn is, she puts out great content on both TikTok and YouTube, and she does some great tweets and stuff on Twitter. So give her a follow and give her a subscription and follow her around on TikTok as well. Which I really should get back to doing. I started and totally stopped for some reason.
It's okay. I like privated most of my videos and tried to start over, and then now I don't have a ton of content on there, so we're all a mess.
Yeah, no kidding. Anyways, Autumn, thanks for doing the show, and welcome to the show, by the way.
Yes, thank you for having me. I know you asked me such a long time ago, and I just wasn't ready yet, and I thought I was going to do this on my own channel first, but then I decided I was like, no, actually I think it'd be better to do this with somebody first, and then if I leave out some stuff, I can always put it in the video on my own channel when I get around to making it. But this is going to be the big one. This is because I decided I was I need to open up more, because there's some stuff that I'm not saying that I really want to say and need to say. It's just harder. So. Okay.
Well, I'm here, right? So you can chat with me about it. And I'm a pretty good listener, I've been told. So shit, I had something else to say now, and I threw myself off here. Oh, yeah. Actually, I had you scheduled for an earlier date, but I fucked up. I don't know how the hell it happened, but I have it on an app on my phone where I put all my dates and stuff for the show. And I take photos of them so that I can send them to people so they can pick and choose, as you saw. Mm-hmm. And somehow all the dates on the app disappeared. So all I had were photos, and I hadn't added yours by that time. So I think I can copy and paste right off the photos. So I tried to do that, and I tried to remember who the hell I was or who the hell I had scheduled, and I just screwed up. There's a couple of people that I got screwed up. But anyways, all the rescheduling happened, and here you are.
Yeah, and no big deal. We figured it out. So
we did. We're smart like that. Mm-hmm. But anyways, what I do, as you know, is I talk to people about their journeys away from whatever belief systems they were once a part of, and I generally ask people to take us all the way back to when they were, in the indoctrination stage and how they ended up being in the belief system they're in, and notices the dominoes starting to fall and how you found your way out.
Yeah. Yes. So should I start now? Is this where we're starting? Do you want me to start with, how I found my way in, right?
How, when your family and stuff and being indoctrinated, all that shit.
Yeah. Okay. So, I was indoctrinated as a child. So it was your typical, I would go to Sunday school every Sunday. And when I say typical, I mean a typical American evangelical experience where it's you're born into it. Your parents talk to you about God, or my parents talked to me about God in the home. So we would pray at night at bedtime. We would read Bible stories. We would go to church on Sundays. And then it was my grandparents too. So, I had, sorry, I just have my notes here because I want to make sure I'm going in order and I'm not too crazy all over the place, because I tend to kind of talk in circles sometimes. But so basically my entire extended family is religious as well. So not only did I have it in my immediate environment in my home, but it just kind of extended outward. So especially my grandmother on my mom's side, she would take us to church and pray over us. And it was such a lovely experience as a child, because my grandma was my Sunday school teacher a lot of the time. And she would sing to me about how Jesus loved me and prayed that I grow up to be a woman of God. Man, I'm already getting sad thinking about this. I'm so sorry. I knew I was going to be a mess.
It's okay.
I'm so sorry. This is so hard.
Take all the time you need.
Because she has Alzheimer's disease now, and thinks she's not the same person anymore. So, but anyways, it's a happy memory of her. God. Whew, okay, we're not even 5 minutes in. So this is why it took me so long to want to do this. So, she would pray that I like grow up to be a woman of God, and it was like very meaningful to me. Like I was like passionately a passionately spiritual child. I think because it was like the way that I bonded with my family. Like I would be like, God told me this, or like, I want to figure out a way to prove that there's a soul. I remember at like 8 years old, I was like, what if we like swapped the brains of chickens and like figured out like that the chickens behaved differently, and then we were able, I don't know. I just was like, there's got to be some way to prove that there's a soul. And I mean, I thought about this stuff so young, and I did have questions as a child because, there's kind of this rhetoric in atheist circles that like, people, if you're a Christian and you actually read the Bible, then you become an atheist, or if you're a Christian and you actually question, then you become an atheist. But I really did read the Bible, and I really did question as a kid. But the issue was that when I did question my Sunday school teachers, like they would teach us like murder is wrong. And then,
pretty sure you don't need Sunday school to know that.
Right. But they'd say like the 10 Commandments, the 10 Commandments of like, thou shalt not kill. Right. And then they would teach a different Bible story about how God would kill people. And I would be like, wait a minute, like God just said not to kill people, or wait a minute, God just said not to be jealous, but here he is over here being jealous. Like, and I would question them, and they'd be like, no, this is a different kind of jealousy, or this is God's justice. So it's different in this way. Oh, yeah. And you give kids a different pattern to look for. So you give them the initial, like people gave me the initial pattern to look for of like, okay, killing is wrong. It causes pain. It causes harm. Being jealous and envious and greedy is wrong. It causes pain. It causes harm. But also here's this pattern to look for of like, but when it's God, there's your exception. And so our brains tend to look for patterns. And so I just plugged the pattern in as a child and was like, okay, when it's God, there's exceptions. There's always a special reason. There's always a good reason, because he's God. He knows what he's doing. And you're supposed to be obedient, and God loves you, right? So that was the information that I had to go off of. And I just took to that from such a young age. And I think because I questioned as a child and was given answers that I felt were sufficient as a child, then I looked for how to plug things into the pattern that I was given, the schema that I was given. As I grew older too, I was like, if there is science, or if there are questions that seem like they don't add up, there's always going to be a way to figure out how they do actually reinforce God's word, and how Christianity is true and correct and God is right. There's always going to be a way to solve that. Now, I didn't know at the time. I was just solving cognitive dissonance, and I was given a lot of really good tools for solving that, because that was the goal that I was given. The goal is to keep your faith, to keep loving God, to keep being true to God, to spread Jesus's word. The goal is not to question. The goal is to suppress the questions. So that just kept going. And actually, then I had an existential crisis in 5th grade. And I just thought about how finite life is. Like, I was a very deep kid, so I would go, and I had the Sunday school teacher named Mr. Mike, and it became this thing where like every week I would try to challenge him with like my craziest question about God being outside of time and space. And every single week, Mr. Mike like did not fail to have an answer for me still. So I ended up going into a Christian junior high and high school, and we would have weekly chapels, as well as I would attend church on Sundays, as well as I was in Bible courses with like comparative religions courses, but obviously taught through the lens of like Christianity is the truest and the best religion, and we're going to compare them, but like not really fairly. And apologetics, ethics, philosophy, like all kinds of things through a Christian lens. And constantly we would have in chapels missionaries coming to the school and telling us about the work that they were doing in other countries. And that just like lit me up. I was all about that. Like I loved church. I loved youth group. I loved God. and I wanted my life to be as meaningful as it could be. And I think because I was such a philosophical kid in high school, I really started deconstructing capitalism. I really didn't like I went to a private Christian school that was full of rich people, and it was full of this like capitalist ideology of like everybody just needs to be the best and the brightest and make the most money, and I just was like repelled by that, or like repulsed by that. And I was like, no, that's so opposite of like what Jesus would be like. And it's so funny because it's like a common rhetoric that I hear now is like Jesus was a socialist. I feel like I figured that out all by myself in high school. I like saw the definition of socialism, and I get that like he wasn't actually a socialist, but if you look at like socialist philosophies, if you look at how Jesus behaved, like I was like, I think Jesus would have been a socialist. Like, I don't get why our society is so individualistic. I don't get why like we're not more collectivistic and working together, and like why it seems like the church doesn't really follow like the sell all your possessions and follow me kinds of commandments, you know. And maybe that was me being like just like kind of full of myself in a different way. I was like, you know, like I'm not going to go this way, I'm going to go this other way of like selling my possessions and following Christ. And but I also think it was like I couldn't help but find meaning in that because it was in my home, it was in my school, it was in my church, and I wanted to be genuine, and I wanted to do the right thing. And I also, after having existential crisis when I was younger, I wanted my life to be as meaningful as possible because I realized that this life was finite, and life after death was going to be better if I just invested in the eternal kingdom instead of tell me if I need to take a break because I'm just going now. Like I'm just talking.
No.
Okay.
You break when you're ready to break.
Okay. And so I was like, you know, I want to be a missionary, and I want to do what Christ would want me to do, because if that's the most important thing, then I need to live out my life for Christ. And I didn't even want to go to college because I struggled in school, probably because my school was kind of cult-like. And I don't think that the way school is done is ideal for people to fall in love with learning. Like I fell in love with learning in college once I got a choice and was able to do interest-based learning and learning in groups. Because also like coming home and doing homework, like isolated by yourself, if you're not doing it with other people, like I need to externally process things to learn. And you know, I just didn't do well in school as a kid. So I was like, I don't even want to go to college. I just want to like go work on the eternal kingdom. This is what's important to me. It doesn't make sense for me to go to college because what else would I need besides God's word? But luckily, I was left this college fund by my great grandfather. At the time that I was 18, it was $100,000. I'm being specific about the money for a reason. And I was like, you know what? If I choose a local school and I choose a cheaper college, then I can use the leftover money for missions work, because my parents said that I couldn't have the money unless I went to school, because I asked if I could just use it for missions work. And they said I had, because my mother had childhood trauma where her mother, the grandmother that I talked about, was forced to work a lot and be very, very poor, taking care of 3 girls on her own because my mother's father left. And he left because he left the church, and he was a very selfish man. And at the time, as a child, that was my idea of an atheist, is somebody very selfish who leaves the family and doesn't follow, you know, God's loving way, like my grandmother did. I had this like example of like what I thought Jesus was like my grandmother, very caring, very kind, very generous. And this example of what I thought an atheist was. And this was reinforced in my Christian school as well, of like, atheists are these selfish and grandiose and I'm forgetting a term, like unhumble. What's the opposite of humble? Prideful. Thank you. There.
Oh, I was going to say arrogant or prideful. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. And he fit
we
that.
Totally are.
Yeah. He fit that narrative for me. So it was like a real life example in my small little world of being uneducated that reinforced that belief. So because my mom really believed that women should get a degree to be able to take care of themselves in case there's a divorce or something along those lines.
That sounds quite anti-Christian, really.
Right. Actually, I'm getting there because
okay.
Yeah, it is interesting. So I decided to go to a cheaper college to save money for missions work, and I was going to use all the money for missions work. And I was a very strong, opinionated woman because my mom is a very strong, opinionated woman. And also just like my model for like what a woman should be wasn't really like the biblical womanhood. Like that wasn't something that was gone. Like modesty, not having sex, purity culture, that was all gone over at my Christian school. But the rhetoric about being like a soft and like gentle, unopinionated woman, like not as much. And I went to college and I became a part of, so actually it's embarrassing, but like I was known in my college dorm as that Christian girl because I like immediately was like trying to proselytize to everybody in the dorms and yeah, like not in a like knocking on people's doors being like you should accept Jesus, but just like it was all that I knew. Like you bring up Jesus on the daily because I went to a Christian school before, so it was normal to me. And I had to give a reason why I didn't want to drink and why I, didn't have sex and all that stuff. And so I would give my reasons and I would go to church and my roommates knew, and I just kind of became known as that Christian girl. And it was fun still. I DD'd for my friends, like designated driver, still go to parties, still had the like some of the experience without trying not to sin. And I promise we're getting to the deconstruction part. I'm just like trying to paint a picture of like what, because I don't want to just talk about leaving. I want to talk about why, like, I want to talk about how I became the way that I was. Like, I really feel like that's an important part of this before we unravel it, is like how it all became like sewn together. So, and environment just plays a huge part in behavior, like come to find out. So I joined some Bible studies and I would go feed the homeless on the weekends. And then I like got kicked out of my Bible study because I got this college boyfriend and his sister was running my Bible study, and we weren't following Joshua Harris's like idea of like courtship, and she thought we were dating wrong. So she kicked me out of her Bible study. And I just kept like getting in trouble at the church that I was like attending my freshman year of college, because then like my boyfriend's family kicked him out, and so he slept on the couch of our like dorm, like me and all my roommates like let him sleep on the couch. And then he, like somehow my pastor like found out that he like slept on the couch at my dorm, and I got kicked off the worship team, and even though we weren't doing anything. And so I just kept getting in trouble despite trying my best to like refrain from all the things that I had been told I should like refrain from. And it really sucked for me. I was really sad for myself freshman year because I didn't feel like I fit in with like my roommates, and I didn't feel accepted by church either, because like no matter what I was doing, I wasn't modest enough. I wasn't doing enough for other people to not judge me or not to like reprimand me, even though I was trying my hardest. And so I ended up changing church groups to this military ministry that opened up to college students. And this is and this is when the biblical womanhood stuff kicks in, because they were very all about Paul's teachings. And I started to question if I was a biblical woman, because I was like, well, I shouldn't be who I am based off of the culture that I grew up in, because I'm supposed to be not of this world. I should be the kind of woman that God expects me to be. But I wasn't this like quiet natured woman. And I was opinionated and loud and funny and different than the picture that was given to me from the word. And so I was learning in school a lot about bias and how culture shapes you, and a ton about psychology, and like trying to fit it into this like biblical framework that I had in my head. And so I actually thought, okay, like I shouldn't be biased towards like the way that I grew up. I shouldn't be biased towards the culture that I'm in, and I should drop like basically who I am, and in return for this like this biblical idea of like what a woman is. Mm-hmm. So I changed my personality. It was I kind of adopted a more like cult personality at that point. So at that point I would say I was like in a fundamentalist cult in that group. They were really great people, most of them men, some women, really great people. And I think I took to them because they were as passionate about Christianity and Jesus and the Bible as I was, and I got along with them. But also I exchanged like a lot of my personality for like something else, I guess. And I'm going to check my notes to make sure I'm not leaving anything out.
There was a question about the money you were getting for school, and Kimo Maki had wanted to know in what way the inheritance would it have been spent in respect to the missions. Like, do individuals receive the money, or is it earmarked for paying for travel costs and whatnot?
Yes. I'm going to get there because it's out of order, but I will get there. So,
okay. Sure.
So, and by the way, I decided to be a missionary at my college. That was something I meant to say, because that's why I was known as that Christian Girls. I thought it was for the best for everyone. Like I was doing what I thought was right. And I thought that was my way around, like, or like my way of getting the best of both worlds, like honoring my father and mother by going to college because they wanted me to, because I had never heard of a missionary who like disobeyed their parents. But also, you know, doing some of what I wanted to do too, I guess. It was like my compromise, like, okay, I'm just going to try and be a missionary at a liberal school. That's why, I'd gotten accepted to like only Christian colleges besides that. Like I only ever applied to Christian colleges because at first I thought I was going to go that direction. But then I was like, oh, I can just use college as my mission field. It doesn't have to be in another country.
Sure, that's right.
Yeah. So I started learning a lot about bias. I started learning a lot about social psych, and I had a lot of questions. But I would always find a way to make science fit into my worldview. And I also just would dismiss information that just outright stood in the way of me believing in the Bible. I was taught at my Christian school a lot of disinformation in high school. I was taught like carbon dating was all wrong and evolution was not really a thing. And so I thought that if there was science that contradicted the Bible, that it was probably this biased science that scientists were just trying to make look like evolution was real or naturalism was true. And, if there was science that stood in the face of like what I believed, then it was going to be later debunked. I was just sure of it. I was like, that's how I got through college still believing was like, anything that shakes my faith is probably bad science. Like, it's so funny because I was like learning about bias and still not recognizing my own, because I couldn't view Christianity that way. I was like, oh, like bias makes sense because it's our sin nature of just like wanting to be selfish or wanting to see what we want to see, or interpreting the Bible how we want to interpret it because we're sinful. And
doesn't everybody do that though?
Right. And I just I never applied bias to Christianity, like that I was being biased about believing in it. Like it just didn't cross my mind because I couldn't get there yet. It took a while. So let's see here. Yeah. So I was in that group and just got super involved. And then I decided to try and invest in young women, like either women who were just entering college. I was getting in, to be an upperclassman. So I thought like, I'll invest in other women and that will be my ministry, because I couldn't preach to men because that was not biblical in my view. And I was like, but I can preach.
It says so in the book. So
right. Yeah. Well, and people will try to dispute like because of cultural context that doesn't apply to everybody, but we won't go down that rabbit hole right now. So at the time, though, I saw it as like Paul referenced Adam and Eve in the scripture, where he also said that women should be silent in church and not teaching. And if he referenced, the creation of man, then it must mean that he's talking about, like, his reasoning was Adam was made first and then Eve. And so, men are to be the protectors, providers, teachers, and the lead, right? They're the Godhead. And so, and I was super fundamentalist, so I was not going to interpret it any other way at the time. So I was like, I'm going to, go invest in other women because I'm surrounded by all these military dudes, because we opened up our ministry to college students, but there weren't that many women too. And I loved those guys, but I just also was like, I want to teach too. I want to do, I've always been a do something kind of person. And so I went to another church to do that. And I met this guy. And this guy, it was like everything that I thought I had been promised. He loved Jesus. He wanted to do missions work too. He was super charming. Everybody loved him, very handsome, and obsessed with Jesus and God and Christianity, and just swept me off my feet. And we started dating. I was like 20, turning 21 at the time when I met him. And so we started dating, and like right away we were talking about how we were maybe going to get married one day and go off and do missions work together. And I didn't know at the time that I was being love bombed by a narcissistic, psychopathic abuser. And so at the time I thought it was like this really amazing thing, and that God was going to give me this analogy or this picture of what it was going to be like to be with God in heaven, because the way that Christians view marriage is like the church is the bride and Jesus is the groom, and marriage is just foreshadowing of what it's going to be like in heaven. And I had these beautiful pictures painted for me in growing up in the church of like, if I saved myself as a virgin, I was going to have a healthy sex life. And if I, emotionally saved myself for my husband, I was going to have a good marriage. And as long as I found someone who would passionately love Jesus like I did, everything was going to be dandy. That is just what I was taught. And of course, there were mixed messages. But for the most part, I was like, this is perfect because I've followed God. I've followed all the rules. And of course, at the time, I wouldn't have called them the rules. I would have called it just loving God and doing what God called me to do, right? Because you have to use certain rhetoric for it to sound nice. And so when we got engaged, I noticed that I already knew that he was not always very nice. We went to see like a counselor, and the counselor, and I'm so sorry that I'm not even to the deconstruction part, and we're already a half an hour in. I'm so sorry if I went on too long.
You don't have to apologize on.
Okay.
You tell this the way you want to, the way you're comfortable doing it.
Okay. So when we were engaged, we went to go see a counselor, and I thought that if I, was telling the truth and being honest about him being like getting in my face and screaming and calling me names and just switching into like this completely different person. Sometimes I thought maybe the counselor would say like, God doesn't want you to get married anymore. But the counselor didn't say that. And this was a Christian man, and I was kind of taught all my life to like listen to Christian men in leadership. And this guy was saying like, no, we could still make it work, even though there's this toxic, this like pattern of toxicity going on. Like, like the Bible never claims that you're going to be perfect on earth. It claims you're going to be perfect in heaven. And so we're called to like continue to like forgive and turn the other cheek and follow Christ. And, Christ suffered and therefore we suffer. And maybe this is just Satan trying to tear apart what God had for us in the missions field. And I was just given this really weird way of making sense of everything. And I got married, and on my wedding day, I had a gut feeling that it was wrong, because he was so mean sometimes. But
I thought, mean. What do you mean by mean?
So before
verbal abuse, that kind of thing? Or?
Yeah, he's like very verbally, mentally abusive, screaming before we were married, but I'm going to get there. So, okay. I just didn't know how to interpret a gut feeling as a Christian, because some things were Satan and some things were God, and there was no epistemology for knowing who was who. You just had to try to use scripture and other people's opinions to try to make sense of like what's going on in your life. And I had a gut feeling saying like, don't marry this guy. But I did. And then I felt peace like after I got married, like, oh, okay, it's done with. Like I did it. Like maybe everything's gonna be fine now. Like maybe this magical thinking of like, okay, like, everything's going to be okay and I'm going to get what I was promised, like this foreshadowing of like being. Sorry, it's really sad still sometimes. Like I don't really think about it very often, but when I do, it's really sad.
Big virtual hug for you. You're getting a lot of love in the chat too, by the way.
So things got worse. So I was taught the normal rhetoric about pornography. So like the first week we were married, I found him like watching porn, and I thought, oh my gosh, like, you know, like things are already falling apart. We've been married for like a week, you know, like, because I was just terrified of everything. Like I was taught to be terrified of everything. And I was really hurt because he wasn't treating me the way that I thought like a new husband was supposed to treat their wife. And then I would try to like come to him with my feelings about it. And then when I would confront him, a lot of the time he would just escalate it to the point where it would get physical. And it, a lot of times it would get physical on the weekends. And then I would be relieved to go back to work on Monday because I worked for like a Christian preschool where everything was like fine and dandy and I could like escape from him. And then the cycle would happen every week. Like it was just hell. Like hell is real in that sense.
Yeah.
So my fight or flight was going off for like a year straight. And I would try to all the ways that I could to fix the problem. But at the same time, there was no thought of leaving because like Christ was so against, Jesus was like so against divorce. And I just was always told that if I followed what God wanted, that things would be made right in the end. And I didn't know when that would be, but that's just what I was like called to. And so, then on top of that, I was starting to also intermittently deconstruct Christianity because a few reasons. One, I had finished up school and I had learned a lot about the brain and social psychology and explanations for behavior. And I was trying to explain at the time, like my husband's behavior and trying to also use those tools in the classroom where I was teaching preschool. And there seemed to be a lot of better explanations and better tools for explaining and dealing with behavior and psychology than there was in Christianity. And I also, because I was trying to go into the missions field since I was graduating, I was learning a lot about other cultures and applying social psychology to how like cultures form, because I basically believed that because Christ spent 30 years on the earth in a culture before he started his ministry, that it was only right for me to learn everything that I could about a culture before I entered into it and tried to share the gospel. Because I also had read the Sandalwood Bible, which is a book about this missionary who just went into this culture to share the gospel and didn't learn anything about the culture. And I was like, well, he did everything. Like, no wonder you hate his character in the book because he did everything wrong. Like Christ didn't just go in and start saying stuff. Like he lived in the culture first and he loved the people. And I was like, I'm going to be different than this character in the Sandalwood Bible. I'm going to be like Christ and have sacrificial love and embrace other people's cultures while doing that, I guess. And in doing that, I also thought, okay, well, I'm going to learn about, I wanted to help orphans or children who were like neglected. That was what I felt called to as a missionary, because I know you said someone asked. And so I was so I was planning on going to China with my husband at the time. But I also was just learning a lot about different Asian cultures because the school I worked for was primarily, they were primarily Asian immigrants. So they were like Japanese, Chinese, Korean. And it just at the time it made sense that like God wanted me to go to an Asian country to work with orphans, because like I was learning like a little bit of Mandarin, and I was surrounded by Chinese culture at the school I was working for. But then I also started watching documentaries on North Korea and learning about how children are indoctrinated into loving their government and Kim Jong-un, and being compliant in a dictatorship. And so I started to try to use the tools that I was given in my degree with psychology and social psychology and biology, because my degree was a mixture of it's kind of, so human development, you use like the biopsychosocial model. So you're taking psychology and biology and sociology, and you're using tools from all three to try and help, like go into a field to help people. So you're not just looking at one aspect of the person, you're trying to look at the whole person. Sure. And so I really wanted to do this, and I thought, you know, I could work through my marriage issues. I didn't like I did, and I didn't see myself as a victim of abuse, because like if you're supposed to be like Christ, and Christ literally let people murder him on a cross, and he was God, then like I should be able to handle like people, like someone, like it's not right, but at the time I was like, I should be able to handle this, I should be able to forgive this, and at the same time it wasn't lining up with me physically, because like I on a physical level like also couldn't forgive it, and even though I wanted to, which is just crazy, but I know how crazy it all sounds, but it's just the truth. So my husband at the time, couple of things. So like I had the money left over from missions work, and his first car, that when we were together, like crapped out, and he bought a new one off of his neighbors and wasn't making the payments. And then when he got married, I just paid it off. I was like, you shouldn't be in debt. That's not what God wants. Like, let's just pay it off. And then he also had this debt from school that he didn't finish. And I had the money, and he was my husband. And I thought, okay, like I'll pay off his debt, and then we'll work to save up for missions work together. Like maybe this is what God wants. And in Christianity, you're not taught to set healthy boundaries for yourself. You're not taught to seek fairness. You're just taught to be sacrificial. So not only did I let this person physically, mentally, like emotionally, verbally abuse me, but I also gave him the rest of that money. And then when I couldn't take it anymore, I missed one part. So I was watching the documentaries on North Korea and trying to understand. And then I also was like, well, I should also listen to atheists, because I was taught in Christian school that I can listen to atheists and they're not going to have anything substantial to say in debate. But if I try to listen to where they're coming from, because from that mindset of like listening to people and embracing their culture and seeing where they're coming from, like Christ would, then I can know how to better share the gospel with atheists. So I started watching like a debate between Christopher Hitchens and William Lane Craig, and I watched some atheist documentaries as well. And then the atheists had way better points than I was taught in Christian apologetics class in high school.
I've heard that so many times.
Yeah. And then Christopher Hitchens said, you know, God was like a North Korean celestial dictator. And then I was like, wait a minute. Like, I've been trying to figure out how I would share the gospel if I ever went to North Korea, or how I could rescue North Koreans from this horrible indoctrination that they're going through. But like, what if I'm indoctrinated too? Like, it was like, what if? Like,
like someone hit you with a water balloon.
Yeah. And so not only was I starting to doubt God because I just couldn't see how he could allow me to suffer so much. Those were like the doubts I was used to from just growing up in the church, like, if, you know, but then there was these other kinds of doubts that were different, because these doubts came from a place of like, there is better logic coming from the atheist point of view, and I can make sense of life using these tools that I've been given in school better than I can make sense of it using the Bible. I've got new language to make sense of life now. But I still, you know, I was so attached to the ideology at the same time. And I had invested so much. Like, I'm sure people talk about the sunk cost fallacy on this show a lot. Like, you invest so much of yourself, like you're not wanting to let go of everything
it was your life up until then, really, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I was still a Christian, and I really just couldn't take any more of the abuse, and I decided to start telling people what was really happening, because I was covering up for him at the time, because I didn't want anybody to think bad about him. I was making excuses for him, like he experienced abuse as a child, and you know, I just thought I'd be delivered from it. And so I started telling people, and I didn't know that if you tell people like what somebody who's a psychopath is doing, like they don't take accountability, they leave the state. So I told people what he was doing, and he left. And then because I was still a Christian and I had all this cognitive dissonance, I was devastated that he left, because I didn't want him to leave. I just wanted God to do a miracle. And this all probably makes me sound really stupid, but it's just true. So he left, and I wound up trying to
take a moment.
Yeah, trying to leave this earth. And I wound up in a mental hospital for good reason. And my fight or flight had been going off for a year, so I was a complete mess. And then they were trying to put me on medications that were making me like way worse. So I was like out of my mind. And I went to the mental hospital for, I don't know exactly how long, something like a week, and really wanted to get out of there because it made me feel even worse, because it was so dark. Like there were so many people there just going through so much. And as a highly empathetic person, it just wasn't helping, because I felt like I was supposed to share Jesus with them, but I was also like completely broken. So I'm sorry that this is so dark.
No, don't have to be sorry. I'm sorry you had to go through that shit.
So I was able to leave the mental hospital on the condition that I went to outpatient therapy regularly, like starting with twice a week. And I quit my job at the time because like I just couldn't handle caring for children in the state that I was in. And I started to do cognitive behavioral therapy and learn about cognitive distortions. And I got off of the medications that were making me worse, which might have contributed to me wanting to kill myself, because the medication was just making it so I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat. I dropped like 20 pounds. I was extremely thin. So not sleeping, not eating, having just gone through trauma, like I think that's what explains why I was so out of my head. And I started going to outpatient care, and my therapist was an atheist. And I would talk to her about God at first, trying to make sense of everything that happened to me. And she planted like a little seed of like, well, I've always known that life is random and like none of this is really personal. And at first it didn't resonate with me at all. I was just like, oh my gosh, like another person that like doesn't know Jesus. But then she finally gave me a safe space to question things, because I didn't have that with my friends and family, because all my friends and family would encourage me to not question God and to keep my faith. And learning cognitive distortions, like irrational thinking, you learn how many are in the Bible. And I was like, well, wait a minute, like, am I just seeing things in a twisted way because I'm mentally ill? Or is God abusive like my husband was? Because I don't understand why he wouldn't care about consent, why he wouldn't care about boundaries, why he would care so much about just belief in him and not well-being. And I began to see God as a narcissist, like my ex-husband. And I was like, well, am I seeing this because I'm sick or biased or sad or in grief, or like, why am I seeing things this way? Or is it because it's not true? And then I realized that what made it okay for me to marry an abusive person and allow myself to be abused was Christianity, because there's all these exceptions for behavior, and not a whole lot of teaching women about self-respect, I guess.
No.
And so I realized this just with the help of my therapist. I wouldn't have been able to do it if I hadn't been seeing a licensed therapist who knew what she was doing. And she didn't try to force me to stop believing in Christianity. She just made it okay for me to think what I really thought. And I realized while reading The Question of God that I didn't believe in him anymore. And I grieved the loss of Jesus, this person who I thought I had a relationship with all my life. I grieved my marriage, and I let myself feel sorry for myself, which I tried not to do because I thought it was like unhumble. I thought I was being prideful by ever like allowing myself to feel my feelings, but allowing myself to grieve in a space that where like I decided how things went, and I decided how to get well and what worked for me. And I liked, yoga and going to the beach and learning ukulele and a lot of other really cool things. And I'm obsessed with science, and I found a lot of things that I could find joy in. And that's why I will say, like, I didn't really go through an angry atheist phase, because I was like, well, understanding psychology, understanding kind of how this all happened to me, I guess it's really nobody's fault. There's really nobody to be angry with. And also, I think I had been so sad and in such a bad way for so long. I was ready to heal. Like, I just couldn't handle going through a phase of anger. I didn't want to do another thing.
It's unproductive too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's okay to be angry. I think we should allow people to be angry.
Of course.
But in a productive way, right? Or at least not in a destructive way. And so I was ready to heal. And I there's a lot more, like if I ever did a video on this on my channel, there's a lot more information about psychology that was part of my deconstruction that I just like don't have the mental capacity to go into now, because I just have dealt with the emotional side of it. And that's why this story is so hard to tell, is because there's so many pieces to it. But you know, I got better, and I reconstructed to humanism, and I embraced skepticism and mystery of life, and it's okay to not have all the answers. And I loved that. I was like, this feels so much better. And I was at peace, and I was okay. And of course, there are times if I think about that story, of course, like today, like I allow myself to be sad, but there is hope after losing a core belief. And I am a healthy, and that's the other thing I wanted to mention. I've always been scared to like say this stuff publicly too, because I feel like maybe there'll be this stigma where like I'm always going to be an unhealthy person who chooses toxic relationships. But I've done a lot of work to rebuild after that, and learn what a healthy partnership is, and learn and not just a partnership romantically, but with friendships as well. Just I've done a lot of the work, and I love psychology for that reason, because I'm a new and better person from doing the work, not from magical thinking, not from praying, but from real science. And so that's the thing that healed me. And of course, there's always going to be problems in life, but that's the thing that has helped me so far. So yeah, I guess that's what I have to say today.
Well, as long as you surround yourself with good people and people that you can trust and get to know, then you're much better off. It's better than being stuck in the toxic relationships that you've had in the past. Definitely. Autumn, I don't know what to say. I mean, I think this is probably a big, huge thing for you to come on here and talk about this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So kudos to you for your bravery on that, by the way.
Thank you.
And I'm not sure, because I know when I talk a lot about stuff and I get right into the conversation, I don't really pay much attention to a lot of stuff. And I haven't really been paying too much attention to the chat, but I do. And sorry about that, guys. It's not like that was the intent, but there's a lot of love in the chat for you, by the way. All throughout this entire conversation, people have been throwing some virtual hugs and virtual hearts your way, just so you know, just like that. There's a lot of people there that can identify with a lot of what you talked about, and they're all thanking you for being brave enough to share this, as am I. Because I mean, you mentioned it might get a little sad, so I was prepared, and luckily I'm able to choke it back a little bit. But yeah.
Yeah, I guess I should have been more prepared. I thought I was going to hold it better, like a little bit better than this, but it's okay. It's okay.
It's okay. Never hold back your emotions and feelings. I think that does more damage than good, to be honest. But it's unbelievable, some of the stuff that you went through, and you just coming on here and speaking about it shows some real bravery. That's all I can say for that, for sure. And hopefully you don't have to go through some of the shit that you went through in the past again like that, because that's not fair and not good.
Yeah, I also just won't let myself. Like,
that's a good idea.
Like, if I'm not, because, and this isn't victim blaming, like, oh, I allowed it kind of rhetoric, but I just mean like I've learned how to identify like how I should be treated and what respect is, and what mutual relationships really look like, and so I'm happy to know that now. I'm happy to have like a healthier perspective on things, and like what I'll allow, and not like my consent in in what goes on with me matters. Also, that is like why I use the term deconstruction more than I'll use the term deconversion. Just for me personally, I have no problem with you using the word on your show, but I make it a point to use the term deconstruction because I think it's like people who have left Christianity have found their own term for the process of what it's like to untangle Christianity. And conversion, like when you convert, it doesn't really often involve consent. Like, I don't feel like I gave informed consent to believing what I did, because if I had had all the knowledge of like where Christianity actually came from, or what would really happen to me in life from forming these beliefs and then having these beliefs inform my behavior, I wouldn't have consented. And if had I known the truth, I wouldn't have consented, because Christianity is not true. And so I don't really believe most people give informed consent, because even if you're not indoctrinated as a child, sometimes people are vulnerable and as an adult and they go to church. And so I don't think when you're in a vulnerable state, you're able to give informed consent either. No,
you're not. That's right.
And so I don't view conversion as like this positive thing, but at the same time, the word deconversion has this negative aspect of like you're making this emotional, rash decision. And I went through like just such a long period of time of like trying to rationalize and trying to question and trying to make sense of everything. And I went through such a process that it wasn't like this emotional decision of like, oh, my marriage didn't work out and therefore I hate God. Like, this was like, there was a time even after everything that happened to me, I thought maybe that was just another part of my testimony. I didn't know what was going on, but yeah, so that's why I make it a point to use certain language, because I feel like we interpret life with the language that we're given. And so if you can find language that helps people understand themselves better, understand what they're going through better, it is beneficial, because like we can only make sense of what we have language for, I think. So, yeah.
And it's horrifying to me that a belief system causes people to think that way about themselves.
Yeah.
Right? Like I think that's just utterly brutal, but that's all part of the process. That's how they keep you, for lack of a better term, under their thumb, you know? So yeah. Religion, faith, it's all a virus to me.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah.
Definitely. Or it can behave like one, that's for sure.
Right. For sure.
But well, Autumn, thank you for coming on and sharing your story with us. I really appreciate that. And I hope it helped you a little bit to get it off your chest.
Thank you. Yes, it did. This is moving forward. It's just gonna embolden me to be more open and honest about what I really think and where I'm really coming from. So I really thank you for the opportunity.
My pleasure. And just so you know, a lot of people are behind you. So if you ever feel like you're falling, you've got a big network of people that'll catch you. And I think you knew that anyways, right? So
thank you.
Mikey, did you want to pop in? Anything you wanted to say?
Now, this is normally when I come in with something very hilarious to say, but I will spare Neil's t-shirt this day because, Autumn, thank you for sharing. And that's not an easy thing you did. Damn, you were organized, though. Like, that's the one thing, like, everyone's talking about how they want to redo their deconversion or deconstruction story because, like, they're like, oh, shit, I left out this and then I left out, like, all right, Neil, run it back. Run the tape back. I got to do another one. You have bullet points. So, again, kudos to you.
Thank you.
One thing I was thinking of is, like, what were your thoughts on, like, Muslims and pagans and Buddhists, like, while you were, like, fundamentalist Christian? Was it still, like, the let me learn about them thing, or was it, like, a shunning thing? Like, what was your mindset back then?
Yeah, so this is just where things are, again, just very multifaceted because same thing with Islam. I took classes on Islam in college because I wanted to learn where they were coming from, just like I wanted to learn where the atheists were coming from, just like I wanted to learn about different cultures so that I could better share the gospel with them. So I thought if I understood Islam, then I could understand how to share the gospel with a Muslim. So I took a class on the Quran. I took some more comparative religions courses in college. And basically my view of Islam was that it was just fan fiction that was formed 500-600 years after Christ. Like I really did. It seems like fan fiction of Christianity from a Christian's point of view. So I was like, oh, okay. I know how to talk to a Muslim now and how to convert them to the correct religion. Like hysterical because like I was also just completely in the wrong. But and then as far as pagans, I only ever knew one pagan as a Christian, and she was really nice to me and kind of weird, and I liked it. So
yes. I was about to say that describes most of the pagans I know too. Nice.
Yeah.
A bit off, but
I
nice.
was once pagan.
Yeah.
So,
well, that explains a lot, Neil, because you're.
No, I still have a ring to sort of commemorate that time with the little star there, right? So.
Nice. And then you asked me about Buddhists. I really took to Buddhism like as a practice, not as a religion, after Christianity, after deconstruction, just because it has a lot of healthy tools for people who are secular. You don't have to believe any woo-woo stuff. But as a Christian, I didn't learn too much about Buddhism. I think that's why it felt so safe for me as somebody who was like a non-believer to like find rituals in like mindfulness rituals, meditation, yoga, because it was like it had nothing to do with my past with religion, and it still gave me some healthy like psychological benefits. Like I do truly believe that like earlier humans who created religions didn't get 100% of things wrong. They were smart humans trying to figure out life just like we are. They just used religious language, and now we have other language to explain the same phenomena. So didn't have too many thoughts about Buddhism as a Christian, but love it now, not as a religious practice, just again taking the bits and pieces that I like, cherry picking Buddhism.
Sure.
Kind of like the old country buffet. Just take a little pineapple, a little cottage cheese, and I'll put a steak, and then some fried chicken. Just
something like that.
Not a real meal, but I did see all those things and I wanted them. And then my last one before we get out of here and head over to the after party. Why should people download TikTok?
Oh, I am the TikTok queen. No, I just really love, I was joking in a group chat that Neil and I are in that I just love being like the TikTok person of our group because I'm just constantly advocating for people to get on the app. But I just love that it's like a human to human, like it's response platform. Like you can, that's not a good way of putting that sentence. It's like you're really talking to other people, and yes, you only have like a couple of minutes to make your point, and like but it's conducive to starting a dialogue. You cannot necessarily have a complete dialogue on TikTok, but it's also just funny for the memes. Like I'm a jokester, like not today. Today I was very serious, but normally I'm a very silly person. So I like to be able to do like, some satire, some parody on there. Excuse me. So if you ever go on my
too.
What if I just did my voice what if I did it at like 3 times speed? And
that
just
would be funny.
Blah, 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 and I just got a whole video out in a minute.
That would just be my friend Biddy Buddha normally. She just talks normally at 3 times
you're
speed.
Friends with her?
Yeah.
Oh, had we known.
Yeah, I love her.
Known.
Biddy's awesome.
Yeah. Am I I'm 34 in a month. I feel like I'm too old for TikTok.
No. There are people of all ages, like up until the elderly are on TikTok. And I'm not as a joke, like legitimately elderly people have accounts. Elderly
video of you looking at the screen like, is it on? It does not count.
Listen here, you youngsters.
Yeah. No, but they have serious accounts and they do really well. Honestly, TikTok is for everybody. Like the age thing is just such an old, like, It's an old archaic myth at this point. So
Yeah. Sounds like me. Old archaic myth.
A myth.
Yeah. That should be your new screen name. Old archaic.
Neil, the 604 old archaic myth.
Yeah.
I will get right on that because that's just too funny.
Yeah. Anyway.
Thank you for sharing. I know that was rough. Maybe we'll get into it in the after party, but with my mom raising 3 kids by herself, piece of shit dad, abusive dad, and her doing it all by herself, and then for her to say, well, I'm glad God got me through it. I'm just like, no, you did this. So I'm glad you did what you needed to do to get you out of your situation. And you did what was healthiest and best for you. I'm glad you did that. And no one else gets the praise for that but you. So
thank you.
Good job, Autumn.
Good job, me. Good job, me.
Good job, Autumn.
And I have a pink cup. They're yelling at me in chat because my green ones are dirty because I think my dishwasher's broken.
Oh.
Well, why? What's wrong with pink?
Nothing.
I have
because the green, it disappears. It goes invisible.
Okay.
Like, oh, he doesn't have his green cup yet. No, I don't. So knock it off back there.
All right, so just calm down, Mikey, for crying out loud here.
They made an assault on me.
Thanks, guys, for hanging out with us in the chat. I hope you guys enjoyed tonight's show. I was fighting it back. I was fighting back some tears, Autumn. I got to tell you, yeah, it was tough. I had a lump in my throat for a good 60% of tonight's conversation. So,
yeah. Well, thank you for helping me lighten the mood a little bit.
No, I try, but I try and pick spots where it seems appropriate, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're going to do an after party, guys. If you'd like to be involved in the after party, please let my producer fella right down here, Mikey, know via Twitter or Facebook, or if you don't have him or can't find him, you can hit me up as well. But there you go. It's right down there at Mikey Famine. Also, thanks to my amazing patrons. You guys are really the reason that I'm able to keep doing this. So thank you for all your support. I really do appreciate it. And don't forget that very, very soon, Randolf Richardson, the president of Canadian Atheists, and myself are starting our own call-in show called True North Talk. And you can head over to the channel at YouTube / True North Talk, whatever the hell it is. I don't know. Just go look up True North Talk on YouTube and sub. You can also find us at www.truenorthtalk.ca, and that'll link you to the channel there anyways. And also don't forget to check out www.canadianatheists.ca so you can see my smiling face and Randolph's smiling face and what we do here in Canada with the atheist community. Also, don't forget that I'm one of the newer hosts of the revamped and relaunched nonprofits. Mikey here's been on a couple episodes. I haven't been on many lately because I'm still dealing with my mom and stuff like that. She's still in the hospital and relearning how to walk and stuff. So we're getting things together, and I'll probably make my triumphant return to the nonprofits at some point soon. So, anyways, thanks, guys. Thanks for everything. Also, oh yeah, that's right. The last Saturday of every month at 2 p.m. Pacific time, Andy and Seamus and myself do a little show called Atheist Drinking Out Loud. We're always looking for a fourth person to come and hang out with us, so you never know when I might come knocking on your DMs. It's over on the Laughing in Disbelief channel. So head over to, that's Andy's channel, by the way. Head over there and give him a sub too, and you won't miss that monthly show where we have a lot of fun for a couple hours. So, and hashtag coins. Yes, that's the drinking game if you didn't know, guys. And like I always say at the end of the interviews, like the late, great Christopher Hitchens once said, it's called faith because it's not knowledge. And we'll see you guys next time.